to Ancient Rome. I'm Nick. Join Chris, Kaya, Isaac, and I on a tour of the ancient Roman aqueduct. In 97 CE, Sextus Julius Frontius, director of the Rome Metropolitan Waterworks, said, "I ask you, just compare this vast array of indispensable structures carrying so much water with the idol pyramids or the world-famous but useless monuments of the Greeks." To say that Rome was large would be an understatement. It spanned 3 continents and had a population that rivals many modern nation-states. The Roman Empire at its height was vast. Connected by massive networks of roads and shipping lanes, the empire fed wealth in bulk into its heart. The city of Rome mirrored the heft and diversity of the empire, and it was likely the first city in the world to exceed a population of 1 million. It was a confused urban jungle, unlike anything else in the ancient world. The people of Rome were famous throughout the empire for their appetites, and their consumption of water was no exception. From the Republic onwards, Rome brought a love of baths, fountains, and other monumental waterworks everywhere it conquered. The Romans were unusually gifted engineers and used that gift to construct giant aqueducts to slake their thirst. At the collapse of the empire, many Roman towns across the Mediterranean had 1 or more aqueducts, each spanning miles of difficult terrain. By the 1st century CE, the average citizen of the capital consumed almost double the water of a modern New Yorker, with about 10 aqueducts feeding the city. At its consumptive peak in 356 CE, the city had 19 aqueducts. It follows that to analyze such a broad section of Roman architecture, we need an equally broad mindset. It would be an injustice not to take a holistic approach to studying aqueducts. Therefore, we will analyze aqueducts from 3 key viewpoints to answer the following questions. What was the purpose of aqueducts and how were they used? What was their importance to the ancient city? And what were their architectural characteristics? The primary purpose of Roman aqueducts was not to provide drinking water, as many believe. The first Roman aqueduct, the Aqua Appia, was built in 312 BCE, almost 200 years after the founding of the Roman Republic, and over 4 centuries after the mythical founding of Rome. Up to that point, the residents of the city drank water from the Tiber River and groundwater wells, though by this time, many of these sources had become undrinkable. Only 3 aqueducts fed the city by the end of the Punic Wars, when Rome started its most rapid period of expansion. And of those, only one, the Aqua Marcia, was considered to have high-quality drinking water. Towards the middle to late periods of the Republic, the luxurious lifestyle of Roman conquerors reflected the exploited wealth of their conquests. The lifestyle, above all else, included thermae, or baths. Baths would consist of multiple, constantly fed pools of water, kept at temperatures freezing cold, scalding hot, and everywhere in between. At the beginning of the empire, there were about 170 baths in the capital. By the empire's collapse, there were over 900, including the massive public affairs funded by the emperors. And although most water continued to be used for baths, after the first aqueducts were created, it was no longer necessary to draw water from the ground. In the capital, wells were filled and marshy valleys drained to make way for additional buildings. In the place of wells, continuous public fountains were connected to the aqueducts, bringing fresh drinking water to the people. The Romans' habits followed them wherever they went. They built aqueducts for many of the towns under their rule to supply the same amenities provided in the capital. Even large military encampments benefited from aqueducts. Water was rarely free, however. Citizens had to pay for the water for their baths unless they were a person of importance. Networks of lead and bronze piping riddled the area underneath Rome, and often the width of pipes leading from the aqueduct to the person's home would determine their water fees. Sometimes, small inverted siphons would be attached to a pipe, and the height of the resulting spout would be used to calculate water price. Aqueducts were therefore a source of income for the government. Aqueduct water that was not used for drinking or bathing went to a variety of other tasks. Excess water was often sold by the government to dyers or launderers for their work. Not all water was used for the same purposes either. Aqueduct channels were kept separate in their uses about the city, as some were of higher quality than others. The Aqua Alsatina, for example, was often muddy and was therefore used to water private gardens and fill the pools for the naumachia, the marine gladiatorial shows. Castellum divorsum, or urban distribution tanks, were another source of entertainment. Water from the aqueducts was collected in these tanks, which were well paved and brightly decorated with water-themed frescoes. Citizens would lean on the bronze balustrades of these tanks and admire the swirling aqueduct waters below. Excess water was also used at the end of the day to wash refuse off the city streets and into the Cloaca Maxima, the main sewer located in the Forum Romanum. The water was occasionally used for mining and powering mills as well. Aqueducts served cultural and social roles as well. We can imagine the reaction of a poor traveler from the provinces as he saw a massive aqueduct for the first time. A. Trevor Hodge says that travelers, upon seeing the arcades of the aqueducts across the Campagna, would feel that Rome was the eternal city. It makes sense, then, that one of the purposes of the aqueducts was to evoke an immense sense of civic pride. Like many monuments, the aqueducts were a symbol of political and social power for the individuals that created them. If you don't believe us, consider the Frontius quote presented at the beginning of the presentation. As wealth accumulated and population grew, the water needs of Rome's citizens increased. Romans, like any other person, had a basic need for water, but the Roman lifestyle demanded water in abundance. Romans would wash at least once, sometimes multiple times a day. Even without the baths, the capital would have eventually required higher water consumption than local wells could have provided. Additionally, fires and disease were major concerns in ancient cities. Augustus established fire brigades that used water from public fountains to fight blazes. Excess water was used to wash sewage off the streets, which improved public health. Thus, aqueducts enabled the lavish lifestyle and the unprecedented size of Rome, its defining characteristics. Now, for the architectural characteristics of the aqueduct. While Roman arches appeal to the eye, it's important to recognize that to the Romans, the arch was more of a tool than a form of art. Arches were repetitive, easily constructed, and very structurally sound. This confluence of factors made them an ideal tool for keeping water above the level of the city in the plains around Rome. Additionally, the openness of the space under the arches created an easy pathway for drainage and crossing, which helped the farmers in outlying areas of the city. The arches that comprised the long arcades of the Roman aqueducts were constructed through a method called centering. A wooden scaffold was built such that each stone may be laid in the arch from the ground up without needing to support its own weight. When the keystone, the top stone of the arch, is laid, the structure is complete and the scaffolding may be removed. The remaining structure is incredibly stable. The Pont du Gard may look beautiful, but upon closer inspection it betrays another principle of aqueduct architecture: cheapness. The stones of the aqueduct are roughly hewn, and the bottom central arch, which spans the water, is significantly larger than its landlocked counterparts. Its piers are sunk into the ground to preserve the decline of the top row of arches. This keeps the specus, or the water channel, at a continuous slope. Additionally, many aqueduct arcades were built on top of each other in order to preserve funds. This gave them a disjointed look. These factors indicate that, while nice to look at from afar, Roman aqueducts were a tool above all else. We have yet to talk about one of the most important architectural characteristics of the aqueduct. They were largely underground. The specus was often started by drilling a shaft about 230 feet below the source level. The tunnel was excavated and lined with stones. A cement lining and calcium carbonate deposits also helped waterproof the aqueduct. The tunnels were a financial balancing act. They often took detours around obstacles, but the detours could not be too long because then the maintenance costs would increase. If it was cheaper to span a gorge or a valley with a bridge, an arched arcade was constructed. Inverted siphons and lead pipes were also used along the way.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you appreciate this beautiful and pragmatic structure as much as we do. Rome simply would not have been Rome without the aqueduct. Thanks for watching.